This is part B of the fourth video about organizational patterns. In this video, we continue with the discussion of procedures and tutorials. We will also consider when to use illustrations in our writing. We briefly discussed tutorials in part A of this video. Let's go into a little bit more detail. You are probably familiar with tutorials from learning new software or perhaps doing WMIS training. Tutorials are a unique set of instructions because they are intended to teach the reader or the user to learn something, a task, how to use a piece of software, and so on. Tutorials will include a full descriptive introduction, followed by a modular structure with summaries, quizzes, or tests, and hands-on practice. Usually, instructions and explanations are separate from each other. Many organizations now use these types of tutorials to ensure that employees have required knowledge. For example, workplaces are legally required to have employees complete WMIS training. The WMIS training is usually done in the form of tutorial-style modules with quizzes at the end. You must pass all the quizzes to get the certificate at the end. You may see print tutorials, but online or electronic tutorials are much more common now. Each have their own advantages. Print tutorials and manuals can be handy if you need to do a quick lookup of something, but electronic tutorials have the advantage of being portable and searchable. The modules may be structured in three ways: sequentially, 1, 2, 3, in a lateral series of topics, or in a hierarchy. Often you do not have to work through each module sequentially. You can focus just on the sections that are most relevant to your needs. As we've briefly discussed before, procedures are different from other types of instructions and processes. Procedures usually involve more than one person. Procedures do not include detailed instructions for each person involved. Rather, the focus is on the big picture. Individual workers will know their own jobs and have their own instructions to guide them. Procedures, however, are aimed at readers who need to know the order of the tasks to be done, or how and when to coordinate other individuals. For example, evacuation procedures for a toxic spill requires the coordination of many different emergency personnel. While firefighters will know their jobs, someone will have to coordinate what they do with what other emergency personnel must do. Note that there are some procedures that are aimed at individuals as opposed to groups of individuals, such as installing software. A technician will have the general knowledge, but may need to know specific steps or variations for different pieces of software. Pause the video and take a few minutes to find the university's procedures for dealing with academic misconduct, dealing with a fire alarm, dealing with an intruder, dealing with H1N1 or some other illnesses on campus. Analyze them to determine how user-friendly they are. You can then discuss them in your tutorial groups. When you assess usability, whether it's a document that you have created or someone else has written, there are some factors to look for. First, check for accessibility. Is it user-friendly and easy to navigate? Note that there may be some legal requirements regarding accessibility in terms of things like closed captioning for the hearing impaired, as you may see on these videos. Next, make sure that layout and design is consistent and clean without a lot of random changes in style or a lot of clutter. Also, check to see that your navigation guides work well and that illustrations are located near the words that refer to them. And remember your audience, as always. Are you meeting the user's needs? Is the text written at the correct level for the audience with the right amount of explanations and cautions? If you're writing instructions for children, they will be much different than if you're writing for a technician or a parent. Next, take a look at your organization. Is it logical for the purpose and user? The organization should match the structure and vice versa. Check for fog. Have you used clear phrases in plain English? Have you defined your terms and used illustrations that clarify your words? Is everything accurate and precise? This includes your grammar and spelling. If you are careless in this area, what impression will your overall document have on the reader? Finally, check to make sure that your instructions will not harm or mislead your readers. Are there any potential legal problems? Are any disclaimers needed? Now, the term illustration has more than one meaning. We've been using it to refer to visuals, pictures, diagrams, graphs, and the like. However, illustration can also refer to an illustration created with words. An illustration in this sense is like an example that demonstrates a point. In some ways, illustration can be similar to a narrative. You might tell a short story as an example to illustrate a point in your argument. Writers will use illustrations to generate interest, to clarify, to inform, and to convince or persuade the reader. When you are deciding on what examples or illustrations you will use, consider the following. They should provide significant support for your argument. Don't throw in a story for no particular reason. Make sure that your reason for including it is clear. This means that your example or illustration should help to clarify or elaborate on your argument for the reader. It should help your reader to truly understand what you are arguing. Finally, an illustration should add to your credibility as a writer. It should show that you really know what you are talking about. So when you use examples, make sure that all your examples support the main point to ensure there is unity and cohesion in your paper. Now let's try this little quiz to see what you remember or understand. 1. Hypothetical examples are supposedly true but not necessarily actual events. True or false? This is true because a hypothetical is something that could have happened or could be true, even though you have not experienced it yourself. We often use hypothetical situations as examples to help explain something or make a point or to make the reader think about an issue in a different way. 2. Concrete concepts are often supported by abstract examples. True or false? This is false because it's reversed. It should be abstract concepts are often supported by concrete examples. You can think here of the concept of freedom, which could be illustrated by examples about losing freedom when one is in prison or something similar. 3. A paper of illustration should have a main point that unifies all the examples. True or false? This is true because every paper you write must have a main point and must be unified. 4. Illustration is seldom blended with another writing strategy. True or false? This is false. Good writers will blend different techniques whenever appropriate. And finally, 5. Explaining a traffic problem would require more examples than explaining a political trend. True or false? This is false since traffic problems are more concrete and specific than political trends. Arguing about abstract concepts like political trends usually need very clear concrete examples in order to be persuasive. When you use examples, you must be very clear about why you are using those particular examples. You can be clear by ensuring that each and every example is linked to the main point. You also need to provide an explanation either before or after the example is presented. You can explain how the example relates to the thesis by weaving example with explanation. Always remember that your reader can only understand your point if you tell them so clearly. Always explain your examples as you write about them. Don't just plop them in without any context or explanation. In this video, we continued with organizational patterns, focusing on tutorials, procedures, and illustrations or examples. Unless you're told specifically what pattern to use, you will need to use your good judgment in deciding what pattern is most suitable for your purpose and audience. Thank you for listening.